Hello. In this clip from our Justia webinar, Essential Habits for Law Firm Associates in the Post-Pandemic Landscape, Lana Manganello and Benjamin Schweffel will guide you through the importance of building strong professional relationships inside and outside your organization. If you want to see more Justia videos on law practice and legal marketing, be sure to subscribe to our channel.
Exactly. And I mean, it's guaranteed to take time. So, and the nice thing, and I think Ben and I will agree on this, is with intentionality, because of technology, because things are changing so rapidly, I'm seeing associates able to move the needle faster than their predecessor as far as like figuring out what they want out of their practice, where that might have been a slower, more organic process for the partners in the firm where they kind of like hung out long enough and then it emerged. And I feel like now we're in a time where that was kind of a luxury almost. And now we need to be more intentional about thinking about what do we actually want out of our practices and then figuring out how to make that happen for yourself. One thing I'm noticing working with law firms is, they're adapting to this changing pace and changing world. And so if you're waiting on your law firm to kind of present you with stuff and give you, step instructions on how to make this happen for yourself, you're likely going to be disappointed. So really kind of taking the reins and figuring out for yourself, what do I want and how do I make it happen? I'm also noticing with a lot of the attorneys that I work with, their path is a new one. Like a lot of the people I work with are building practices in a way that no one's built them before with, either clients or practice areas that are new. So it's an exciting time in that regard where you really have the ability to kind of shape exactly what you want out of a legal career. You don't have to, I feel like sometimes people are like, who in this firm do I want to emulate, to the T? I feel like that's happening less and less. And it's more, learning from these people as you shape your own identity.
Yeah, I often characterize it because I worked in a few different firms that I look at the various partners that I worked for when I was an associate. I said, I don't need to be him or her exactly because that's not who I am. But they do this so well. And when I sit in those meetings, I want to learn about how they connect with these people. Their clients almost have this like experience where they're bonded to them kind of for life. And I'm like, how do they build such a relationship so quickly and establish so much trust? And I'm like, that quality of this person, I love. They may have other bad qualities. I let those things go, but I try to figure out where's my weak spot and then pick and choose from, I'll say a half dozen people that I worked with very closely and think that are very talented at various things, and then try to piece those together in my own style because I'm not them, but I saw what they do really well. And so it is a really unique opportunity and especially if you work at firms that have more and more people around, because you can do that even outside of your practice group. Yeah, because they're very talented in other ways, doing other practices, and you can glean all of that from them.
Exactly. So let's talk about professional relationships. Many of you have heard about Harvard's study on adult development. It's one of the longest running studies on happiness. And what we found from that work is that the quantity and quality of our relationships are fundamental determinants of our happiness. And the findings indicate that the warmth and depth of a relationship we maintain have profound effects on our health and well-being. So, let's see it. So, the benefits of relationships extend far beyond, personal satisfaction and happiness. They really play a critical role in our professional lives as well. We already talked about kind of the impact of these connections on your skill development and growth as well as career growth. So let's talk about the various impacts of what relationships can provide. So I think we talked a little bit about this, kind of the emotional support of having professional relationships. Being a lawyer is not easy for anyone, and it's not fun all the time for anyone. So as you're kind of going through things that feel like challenges, having people that you can talk to and connect with is going to help you overcome the things that are difficult. There's lots of studies on, and I've done one myself, on people who have more friends inside of their firm or more people within the profession are more likely to be interested in partnership, are more likely to stay in the profession. So there's a lot of reasons why having professional connections is going to help you just with your mental well-being as you go through, what it is to be an early career attorney.
Yeah, and I'll quickly add on to that too. That emotional support component is really important. We come from an environment as lawyers in law school where you're getting ranked against your peers, where you're trying to beat them out for the journal, the job, the OCI interview, whatever it is. So we've been primed in this circumstance where we need to beat the people around us rather than look at the people around us as a resource, as a friend, as somebody that is in the trenches with you, if you will. So a lot of the people that I came up with, I'm still friends with. They're now they might be working with me because we've reconnected at firms. They call me because they're saying, hey, I'm on the brink of partnership. I need your opinion on this. And instead I've built this network of people who I can call about literally anything, rather than people that during those early years I was like, well, I'm going to try to make sure I do better than him or her, so I get that raise. And in the long term, that pays off. You have to get out of that kind of law school mentality that we're raised up in, and instead realize you're all in there together trying to move your careers forward. And those people end up being some of the most important people in your network, if not right away, definitely a few years down the road.
And it's not a zero-sum game. So the people that I see that are most successful recognize, the competition is not in their office. And so or really it's not about the competition, and figuring out how to connect with people and leverage other people is only going to help you. So collaboration, the firms that I work with where people actually talk to one another and want to work together are the most dynamic. The clients enjoy it as well as the attorneys. I think that's a big deal. The more connections you have, the more opportunities you will have for promotion, partnership. And then I think it's important to also recognize, we've kind of hit this a couple of times, but the knowledge and skill expansion. So the more people that you're connected with professionally, whether that's in your firm, in the community, the more perspectives that you'll have and more opportunities to kind of see things in a different way that might be able to help you professionally. Visibility, getting recognition, new opportunities, having a larger professional network is an important component of having relationships. People are generally, the more relationships you have, the more people are trying to connect you with even more people. So again, these things build momentum. Good relationships lead to trust, which can be leveraged to influence decisions and navigate office politics successfully. I work with a lot of attorneys at firms where things are not perfect. And there's lots of things that could be changed for the benefit of the firm. And what I've recognized is, I want you to be the person that changes that. It's not going to happen, when you walk in the door. You really have to build the buy-in from the people there so that you can build up the leverage to be able to actually bring change to the organization. And I've seen that inside of law firms, inside of nonprofits. It's a common thing that, having more connections is going to give you much more opportunity to be impactful. And then strong relationships at work is going to lead to a more enjoyable work environment. Ben, I imagine it's a lot more fun to work with people who like one another and that are friends. And then turnover goes down. And so having this opportunity to, have higher retention where people, morale stays up and you're actually able to rely on one another is important. And then mentorship opportunities, I think a lot of these things overlap. But
and it really can't be undervalued. I mean, these things are so important. If you've been in an environment where you have not had relationships like this, you've seen the kind of the dark side. We're talking about all like the good stuff that happens, and you've probably seen versions of it if you were not in a very healthy environment. But the more that you can dig into some of those issues, you're there, the longer you're there. Every group that I've ever worked in, I leave when I've left those firms. I really miss those people, and I'm like, I really like them. I had to move for my own professional growth, whatever, but I miss those people. And I've moved 3 times. Every single one has been that way, and it's really compounding interest, right? That's like this idea that financial advisors talk about, where we build, we let it ride over time, and we continue to invest. All of these really good things continue to happen, that they continue to grow, and then they last a long time. So you got to kind of dive in and start on that, and you'll start seeing probably there's something in every one of these 10, or probably even more, that are not on this list, that come out of those relationships in a really positive way.
Definitely. Okay, so let's talk about how to build relationships. So we'll talk about building relationships within your organization and then outside of your organization. Some people work in very small firms where building relationships inside the organization may not be difficult. But what I find, in some of the larger organizations is, there's so many people that you can build relationships with. Thinking about, how to do it and with who. It's sometimes a challenge, and sometimes the default is I just need to focus on the partners that I'm working with. And that is definitely a lost opportunity. You're with a large firm for a reason. And so a big part of that needs to be all of the resources and people within that organization. So, being intentional about building out these relationships needs to be prioritized, and needs to go beyond the firm partners that you're working with. So making sure, especially if you're working in a multi-office firm, it's easy to reach out to other associates that you may not have a real facilitated reason to connect with, but going out of your way to connect with these people. Ben already mentioned there's kind of like a hazing process that goes into any early career, especially in the legal profession. And so you already have a lot in common. So being intentional about connecting with other associates. You want to look outside of your department also, as you're kind of figuring out your firm and figuring out what exactly you like and don't like. Having people outside of your department that you can connect to is going to be helpful in understanding, the bureaucracy at your firm, but also just having a better perspective of your work.
Yeah. A couple examples. I just work at a single office mid-sized firm, but I've worked in a small firm, and I have friends at these like really large firms. It's about the intentionality. If you're at another one of your offices taking a deposition, one that you don't normally office out of, set up a meeting with someone, go to lunch with someone, whatever is appropriate in your environment. I don't know what that is, but find an excuse while you're there to go in, pop in, say hi. For me, when I started this firm, there are partners outside of my practice area, and I don't want billing they know about me to be a billing number on some spreadsheet. I want them to know I know Ben. I talked to him in the kitchen while I was toasting a bagel on a Friday morning, even though I do construction defect and he does estate planning, and I really have no idea what estate planning even is, because you just have to look for opportunities to do that within those people, or where you sit. Sometimes you sit in practice groups. Sometimes you sit just wherever there was an open space, especially with hoteling and other things that firms are doing since 2020. So find someone who sits near you. I'll give you an example. I sit a few offices down from a bunch of people who don't do anything like me. And I try to make sure we grab lunch or a happy hour or whenever it is. Somebody may want to do a 7 a.m. coffee. Find an excuse to go do it and build those relationships intentionally.
Great. Okay, so let's talk about how we can build relationships, because there's, science behind a lot of this, and it may feel like, well, I don't know where to start. So Robert Cialdini has a book called Principles of Persuasion, and I want to focus on 3 of those principles, just to give you some understanding of, how you can set out to do this in a mindful way. So liking, reciprocity, and consistency are the 3 that we'll focus on. So we'll first talk about liking, which is the idea that we tend to favor what is familiar to us. And that's part of like the mere exposure effect of something that we see often is something that we generally will prefer. And I think this is particularly relevant in a law firm environment where frequent interactions can help build rapport and foster meaningful relationships. And that may have happened much more pre-pandemic, where everyone was in the office. Things have shifted. Even if people are in the office, they're not working the same way that they did in 2019 as far as, how much time they're spending there and what they plan on doing there. It's usually getting in and out. And so being thoughtful about this is important, and figuring out, how can I be familiar to these people so that they start to like me? Because there's going to be a point where people who you may not be working directly with are going to have some say in your future. And so if they haven't really seen you and know nothing about you, it's going to be to your detriment. So visibility is a key component of this. The more we're seen, the more we're liked, like I said. So one of these things, and we'll get into this, definitely is going to be, I feel like sometimes friends will say, okay, everyone gets back to the office. I don't think that automatically means you're going to be more visible. I think that I can be much more visible with intention, where I'm thinking about who's going to be where and what are they looking at and how do I stay top of mind with them, versus sitting in the office while their doors are closed just because I'm in the office thinking that my business has stopped. All right. So let's talk about building familiarity. So Ben talked about it a little bit, but I think doing outreach to have dialogue is going to be the best way to increase your visibility. So reach out to seasoned colleagues that you admire. Let them know that you're working on your, career goals or business development goals, and that you want their insights. And try to do this face to face versus over the phone. Definitely do not do this via email. But if it's video because they're in a different office, the second point is to meet in person. There's a lot of components of connection that can happen in an in-person environment. So, I think the more that you do this, the more you'll be reminded of like the value of being physically with someone. And it really helps to kind of build that familiarity and likability component.
Yeah, and look for abilities to do that. There's some on here about events and firm events, but if you're in a different office from someone, for example, like I have a friend of mine who works down in downtown San Diego. That's an hour and a half from me. But when I'm down there for other client meetings or something like that, I try to make sure, are you available for a happy hour before I get back on the road, or dinner if it's because I'm going to be in a deposition all day. And at least, rather than just sit on the freeway in traffic, I go and try to make a face-to-face connection with that person or those people. Like last time I was down there, I had 4 of them and we all went to a dinner together. So it's like, you might be at an industry conference. There is some reason that person that you're talking to in another office may be physically near you. You have to be intentional rather than being like, I'm busy while I'm down there. Make room, find a way, because that intentionality is how you end up making those things happen and how you make those lasting connections with people.
Yeah, and you're invested so much into doing these types of things. If you're going to be in the office, the investment is already there, so get the most out of it. So inquire about personal interest. I am shocked at how quickly people will jump right into work. Take a second to just ask somebody what they did this weekend, or let them know, what your Thanksgiving plans are. It may feel like it's better for efficiency for us to jump right into the matter or whatever is going on. But you're going to get much more out of your work with partners and colleagues when there is that personal connection. And so being intentional about, like, I'm going to ask when we get on this Zoom call about this person's, what's coming up. And the weekends are always easy, or the holidays give you a very easy question of like, hey, are you traveling for the holidays? But make the time for that. And obviously have some discernment about like how much time you're going to spend talking about yourself and, what you've got going on. Really use this as an opportunity to find similarities, and then also to, demonstrate genuine interest in what these people have going on in their lives.
And just look around. I mean, if you're meeting with someone in person or even on video, I mean, how many times do you see something in the background of the video or in someone's office? Like, I have a partner who has a bunch of guitars. I don't know anything about guitars, but I assume he likes them, because why else would he have 6 of them in his office? So you can ask him, and then you find out he's into jazz. And so it's like by asking questions and just observing things right in front of you, or even on a video camera or something you read in their website bio. I always include things like, I like wine and I have a basset hound. You wouldn't believe how often people ask me about those 2 or 3 things that I put in my firm profile, and people always ask me about them. So find those things and then ask people about themselves, rather than do less talking about yourself and do more asking about them. And you'll see things starting to pay off, and then people reciprocate. People who are usually good at building relationships want to know about you too. And so you have to find the right balance, and discernment was the perfect word to use, but you'll find that will help you get off on the right foot.
Right. And then show up to the things your firms are actually putting together for you. Those are opportunities that you don't have to think about. You just go. Make sure you're prioritizing those types of things. Also, when you're invited to participate in meetings that are on Zoom, put your camera on, even if you're not talking. People want to see your face, and they'll get maybe they don't want to see your face, but it'll make it much more likely that they'll remember you and become familiar with you. And that familiarity means that if they see my face kind of smiling at every meeting, and Ben's always a black box, and then they ask, they're who do you want to put on this matter, Ben or Lana? And they remember me and don't remember Ben, I have a better chance of being chosen for these types of opportunities. So check all these boxes to put yourself in the best position to get what you want. And then the repeated visibility part, I think, is really important, because again, we're trying to create momentum here. So like going down to the San Diego office once and meeting with someone and having a great meeting, and then never reaching out to that person again is not going to help you as much as if you are now kind of conscious about this person and how can I stay top of mind beyond driving an hour and a half to see them. What are some other ways that I can ping them over email, or the different ways to just stay top of mind and be familiar to these people.
Yeah. And I'll add, there's groups that people pay for and then don't show up. They'll show up once or twice a year. And it's like, if you're going to make a commitment, show up every single time, because that visibility thing really does make a difference. You start talking to people, they'll catch you before the meeting, after the meeting. Otherwise, the first time they'll ask you for a little elevator pitch about yourself, and then they'll see you again in 9 months, and then you're probably going to give that same elevator pitch again because they don't remember you.
Right. Yes. So be intentional about what you're trying to make happen, and then create these behaviors that will build this. I mean, I am not generally just trying to encourage people to be busy for being busy's sake and like going to a million things, have a strategy as to like, who am I trying to be visible to, and be intentional about how you're going to do that versus just saying yes to everything and kind of overwhelming yourself with activity without being specific about what you're actually trying to make happen. So similarity is another component of liking. And so that's part of the, asking people about their hobbies and interests and figuring out what you might have in common. Birds of a feather flock together. Having these dialogues is going to give you this opportunity to find commonality with people. So that's a key component of liking. People like them. And so you may not on its surface see the similarities between you and a 65-year-old partner that's like a different era and grew up differently. But once you start talking about things, professional things, you'll start to uncover a lot of opportunities for you to find similar interests. So I think that's a key component to think about. So reward theory of attraction suggests that we're inclined to like those of us who make us feel good or bring us some form of reward. So attorneys like compliments. Everyone likes compliments. And the truth is, it's less about figuring out how can I compliment this person, but more about thinking about what can I tell this person that I truly feel that's going to make them feel good. And the truth is you work with the people that you work with because you admire them for some reason. And so making that known is only going to help you, saying, oh, I really appreciate how you built your practice in this way, or how you handled, this brief or this client engagement. Express how you feel about people in a positive way. And all of us like people who like us generally. So if it's obvious that you like them, the chances of them liking you go up pretty substantially. But this needs to be sincere. So hopefully this isn't coming across as like, turning into a brown noser for the sake of brown nosing, but really looking at like, getting out of your own way of like, oh, might be weird if I said that to them. People really appreciate when you're vulnerable and authentic.
Yeah, and there's a tension too between that idea of just flattery for flattery's sake. Find a genuine reason to like someone, because you may know immediately, this is not the person I'm traditionally kind of drawn to, and they're a difficult personality for me. Well, keep looking. Find some other way to relate to them, and then at least in maybe the limited interactions that you have with that partner or that person in your firm or in your group that you're going to have to be forced to communicate with, find some way to ease that. Otherwise, that tension, you're just going to come back to it over and over again. Find a way to appreciate who they are and find some sort of connection with them, and things will become easier. Maybe not the easiest still, but easier. And if you look hard enough, you will find something.
And life is too short. All of my coaching is around, finding people that you're in alignment with. There's a big world. There's no reason for you to have to be manipulating people into liking you. You should be aligning yourself in a way where you actually are achieving your goals by building a network of people who are like-minded. So being conscientious on the front end of what you're trying to build here. And how that aligns with your personal preferences and interests and who you are as a human being, making sure that we're thinking about that on the front end. If you're an M&A attorney, but you hate working with venture capital or, people in the finance world, maybe you want to reconsider M&A. Maybe you want to consider approaching the market in a different way, but don't force yourself into a box that you don't fit in, because I can guarantee you it's going to be uncomfortable and you're probably not going to be successful. The last one is kind of a tricky one to talk about kind of presenting your best yourself. Associates, there's not a lot that people have to judge you on. So make sure that what you show up as is the best version of yourself. There are a lot of studies based on kind of appearance and people attributing positive traits like competency and honesty and social skills to the way that people appear. I think Cornell did a study of defendants, and the ones that were perceived as less attractive got harsher sentences. So whether I'm just delivering the information, whether or not you agree with it morally, but this is human nature, and it's something you need to be considering. When people are looking at how you present yourself, they are making snap decisions on like, oh, this person looks like a competent lawyer versus, presenting yourself in a different way where they're making other assumptions. There was another study that showed that people who smile are perceived as being more attractive. And so that's something to think about is like, am I perceived as someone who is open to discussion and feedback? And what should I be doing to kind of check the boxes again to get what I'm trying to get out of my career?
Yeah. Keep in mind too that like a partner may say this, hey, this person just doesn't look put together. I can't take him in that client meeting. And you may want to really be in that client meeting. And that may be the difference. Is because they're like, yeah, I can't, I can't do that. But there is definitely something to that about presenting yourself and looking ready for whatever the circumstances. And it sounds kind of, you went to law school, you did all these years, and now you're talking to me about how I present myself. But whether it's to clients or whether it's to partners, it makes a huge difference. And how you're perceived by them. And there's a body language component to that too, where I've had meetings where people sat there with their arms folded, and I don't think it's because they're just mad and not liking it, but the way that it's perceived, you have to be like really aware of that, aware of the body language, aware of the nodding, the smiling, things that are telling the room how you feel. And if you're sitting there not thinking anything of it, someone may just be like, they look like they're really pissed off. And that is not maybe how you were feeling. So it's really important to be, conscious of all of those things as you walk into those rooms or interact with those people.
Yes. Know that, this is a multi-way street. If you just want to demonstrate your expertise on paper, there probably are some practice areas for you where you can sit, alone in a room and not have to worry about how you're perceived. But for most people, this is something they need buy-in from partners, they need buy-in from clients, and they cannot demonstrate their expertise without that buy-in. So it's something that everyone needs to be considering. Okay. And just the last two of these, Cialdini's principles of persuasion, reciprocity. People generally want to kind of pay back debts and treat others the way that they've been treated. So make sure you're giving before you're expecting to get. So when you're working with partners, coming to them with kind of a mindset of how can I be of service and of value, and thinking about that is more likely going to put you in a position where you're going to get. And the other side, the last one here is commitment and consistency. People feel obligated to follow through once they've shown some level of commitment. So if I reach out to Ben and say, hey, I'd love, I'm working on my career goals. I'd love to share them with you and hear your insights and learn a little bit about you. And he and I, have a great coffee, and he gives me all sorts of advice. And then I start, doing what he suggests at the firm. He's going to feel, bought into my success and more likely to advocate for me. Want to add anything to that?
No, I mean, sometimes that happens formally, like some firms in reviews ask you, where do you want to go and how can we help you? And I can tell you, I've come in with a written plan to partner, maybe one who works with me and one who's like on the executive sort of level. And when you come back and they're like, how are you doing on those things? And they feel bought into your success. So when they see you thriving, They feel like they've imparted something upon you, and now everyone's so happy for each other. I'm happy that I asked them and brought them into it, got their advice. They're happy that they're seeing me do it. And it feels like we're really like pouring into one another, and that's a positive thing you're trying to build. And so that can be a formal thing in a firm or an informal thing with a friend. But either way, there is something that comes out of that from a relationship standpoint.
So let's talk a little bit about building relationships outside of your organization. I think this is important to consider as soon as you can. I don't think that there's a time in your career where you're like, okay, now I'll start to focus on my network. This should be happening in law school and continuously. Kind of the level and bandwidth that you have to spend time building relationships, brand new relationships, will kind of vary depending on where you are in your career. But this is an important thing to consider, no matter how large your firm is. Knowing other people in the community is going to be key, and all those reasons why it's important to have relationships in the first place. So there's lots of different ways to build a network. Again, I think it's really key to start with, what do you like? So what are you trying to make happen? If you have kind of clear goals for your practice, that makes it a little bit easier. When you're earlier in your career, it may be harder to figure out what your clear goals are. And in that case, your goal should be building connections with like-minded professionals. And so, there's affinity bars and things like that are less about like, how do I get a client out of this in the next 12 months? And more about, how do I build a network of people around me who are like-minded and are going places and will help me throughout my career. So I have different ones listed here, conferences and seminars. There's professional associations related to personal interest, would be those like affinity bars, or even just like wine clubs and dog clubs and all the fun things that you can do specific to your hobbies. I love it when hobbies overlap with professional interests, and a lot of times there's some of those things happening. So some like bar associations may have sports events to raise money, or kind of nonprofit components to it. So I'm always looking to check as many boxes as I can when I'm spending my time away from my family, and thinking about like, what's going to help me professionally and be actually enjoyable. I think people are having success putting together these groups on their own, if they can't exactly find kind of the perfect fit for them. I've had people who have kind of put together surf groups where they invite, we're in California on the coast, people, an attorney, maybe a corporate attorney, is especially interested in surfing and invites other corporate attorneys and in-house counsel to surf, every Thursday in Huntington Beach. So, what are they? Feeding two birds with one stone, thinking of ways to do something that you find personally fulfilling and have some additional insight or reasons to do it. Participating in online communities is kind of a newer thing of whether that's on LinkedIn, or I know people were having some success with Twitter back in the day and kind of getting connected with like-minded professionals, alumni events. So really kind of spending time researching to find things that are going to align, and then also recognizing not everything's going to be a win. So go and test it out, grab somebody that to feel it out with you, and see if it's the right fit for you.
Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did enjoy it, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more law practice and legal marketing videos. See you in our next clip.